So, Adrian, I think the question we want to ask is, why are EVs getting written off more readily than our traditional vehicles?
Yeah, it's really early, of course, in the EV life cycle, so I think the data is not 100% definitive about whether that's the case, but it certainly looks like it's the case that it's easier to write off an EV than it is a traditional ICE vehicle. And there are a good number of reasons for that. And let's start with the obvious one. The obvious one is that EVs are new, and every time you get a new vehicle, even a traditional ICE vehicle, if you get a new model in the market, there's always a period of flux. There's a period of change while the market settles and understands that vehicle, while the supply chains for parts and spare parts get set up, where the skills that are needed and the training around that particular vehicle and some of the repair methods of that vehicle. There's always that period of flux when there's something new in the market. EVs are all new, and therefore there's a huge amount of flux, and that flux in itself just makes things more expensive from day one. So parts are more expensive, they take longer to get hold of, we've got to wait for periods of time potentially to understand whether people need to upskill for those things. And of course EVs are particularly new from the perspective of there are some new things that you need to think about even for fairly simple repairs on vehicles. And therefore, from an insurer perspective, what are we talking about? We're talking about the path to total loss of a vehicle for a vehicle write-off. That's after it's had an accident. What are you looking at? It's all an economic equation there between, is the vehicle damaged in a way that you can repair it? How long does it take to repair it? How long is it going to be off the road? Is the information available to enable you to repair it? Are the parts available? Do you have the people with the skills readily available to fix that vehicle, to know what to do to return the vehicle back to the road in its pre-accident condition? If we can get the repair strategies right, we can probably avoid total loss in vehicles in the first place. If other people can come up with strategies of potentially replacing a 4-year-old battery with a like-for-like refurbished battery, great. If we can actually get to the point where actually we've got a really vibrant and economically viable salvage route which sees the raw materials in the battery recycled back into supply chain, we'll realise the value of this incredibly expensive component in the vehicle.
But, you've both used the same word, responsibility. You both have responsibility to how we recycle these electric vehicles, and we've talked about circularity. How much does that add any more pressure onto you making these decisions where circularity is a word that keeps them coming up? How does that sort of help with the decision-making process?
I was going to say on that point, certainly for us, we talked about it a lot with SYNETIQ. We're here to maximise economic and environmental value. When you do one, you do the other. When you do the other, you do the one. But in terms of that point around the growing numbers and what does that mean? While ever it's 1%, 2%, 3%, it's not a core issue. But what we do know is we're all preparing for an electrified future. So that, as I've mentioned earlier in this session, the EV volumes that we're seeing at SYNETIQ, 50% up year on year, doesn't take many years of 50% compound growth before what might be a small issue or opportunity becomes a very large issue or opportunity. And I think that's the same for insurers, that's the same for OEs, that's the same for repair network. I think that's really what we're doing in our collaboration with Thatchum and others, is genuinely pushing the boundaries of what can be achieved, whether it be testing, diagnostics. What SYNETIQ can provide is batteries. Yeah. What do we want to do? What do we need to do? In fact, what's our mission? It's to maximise the economic and environmental value. Play back to the insurers, super important, because the underwriting of an electric vehicle policy, if you're writing off prematurely, but then at the end of the value chain, if you're not maximising the economic value of that battery, well, clearly your electric vehicle policy is going to be more expensive. And that's not helpful for energy transition or helpful for anything. So really incumbent in terms of responsibility on ourselves and Thatchum and others to make sure we are developing those partnerships that allows us to maximise that value. And what we've seen and what the conversations we're having is all too often a car gets written off because it's a lack of knowledge. And the knowledge and the skills and the resources is the answer to that. It's often said, but when it comes to EV only manufacturers opening their doors to the Thatchums, to the SYNETIQs, to the repair industry is actually going to help them. Why? Well, because if their vehicles are more repairable, or the likes of ourselves can maximise their value at their second life stage, they'll be more insurable. If they're more insurable, they'll sell more vehicles. So there's a real, you can easily see all the actors in that ecosystem have a genuine benefit, an opportunity, a vested interest in doing exactly that, which is sharing information genuinely, creating some common frameworks and common language and common standards around repair, around battery diagnostics. You can easily then see a number of equally valid verticals and routes for each vehicle or battery to go down based on agreed criteria. And it happens in all other aspects of the automotive supply chain. So to me, this feels like a natural extension to do it around batteries.
But what's interesting, you've spoken about how there's no book. You're having to sort of look at everything. But from a recycler side, when an electric vehicle comes into the yard, you're looking up, there's no engine as such, there's a battery. So how do you SYNETIQ approach that, and you're sort of looking at, right, but you're saying, well, hang on, we've got to be looking at the information. It's not a case of, we can sell that, we can do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, where can we feed this information back, so it goes back. So classic information for you.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And safety first and safety last when it comes to EVs. So first and foremost, everything we do, it has to be absolutely compliant and safe. That's not just for the safety of our colleagues. Clearly, that's the reputation of our clients. So safety in mind always, but thereafter the approach is the same, which is to maximise economic and environmental value, because when you do the other, you do the one, and when you do the one, you do the other, but different in the sense that who do we need to engage to? So we have this 4R strategy, retail, repair, reuse, recycle when it comes to batteries, and the idea being is that's a pyramid. The lowest value, highest volume would be recycling. The lowest volume, highest value would be retail. But we've got repair and second life, reuse in between. So really important for us in our mission to maximise economic and environmental value is to have partners in each of those segments to make sure that the batteries that can be safely reused for a vehicle are, and we're deploying testing equipment to do exactly that. And I think there's something about sharing the insights from those diagnostic tests with Thatchum and others is going to be really valuable to build a baseline of information about how a battery behaves post-accident, type of accident, level of impact, etc., type of battery. But really important that we have those partnerships in each of those segments, and we don't prematurely recycle when we could reuse. But equally, we're not purporting to be retailing product that is unsafe. So it gives you the compliance as well as the economic value.
And how important is that partnership? You're working very closely together. It's great to see that in the years that I've been involved in this industry, I'm seeing everyone coming closer and closer together. But from Thatchum's point of view, having that, especially on the side of the recyclers, how important and how valued is that?
It's absolutely vital. We did a huge piece of work with Innovate UK last year around the impact of EVs on the insurance life cycle. We would have not been able to do that had we not been partnered with SYNETIQ to understand the whole of that supply chain, the whole of that post-accident situation and every part of it along the way. We can't be successful moving forwards unless we optimise every part of that. Because things are getting more expensive, things are becoming more difficult, the technology is changing in vehicles faster than it's ever changed, not just around the EVs. The EVs is probably the biggest disrupting factor, but there are plenty of others as well. And therefore actually making sure that we consider every part, to that point, one of the major parts of that piece of the work that we did last year with government was to actually just map out a traditional ICE claims flow and then to map out an EV one, and it was radically more complicated and difficult and radically bigger, and there were many, many more decision points in. Over time, we will get very good at doing all of those things, and we will get very good at having the information to make those decisions in a timely manner so that we maximise the value. we can't do that unless we partner with everybody so we understand how to do these changes efficiently, and to actually spot the bits that don't work, to then try and unpick them and try and solve those problems ahead of the market, especially around EVs, ahead of the market growing too big.
And EVs are changing all the time. You know, we see new technology coming all the time, and this, that.
Yep.
So you can't even sort of be sort of complacent when, even if you do come up with how it all works.
No, you
just
can't.
know it's
You
changing.
can't.